So the 2019 Cheltenham Festival is drawing ever nearer. 8 days left to go now, and as we always do here at Timeform in the run-up to the festival, we're going to do a live Q&A here on Facebook, give you the opportunity to ask one of our experts whatever you like about Cheltenham or not Cheltenham, and it's Dan Barber is the man in the hot seat this year.
Yeah, 8 days, a day till our preview evening in Manchester, and it's normally that when you start to realise, God, best pull my finger out a bit here. And this is more than a side to though, it's not just to get our eye in. Plenty of studying's taken place already over the last few months. And yeah, just get your questions in. Anything you want to know. I'm not the font of all knowledge, but I'll have a stab at answering the question, and I can do that from a Timeform perspective, or I can do it from a general what do you feel perspective. So
it's not just horse racing. If you need some life advice, I think you're ready
don't ask me for that, no.
Do
not ask for that.
Am I right in thinking that this is probably more busy for you than next week is, in terms of build-up? Have you got preview nights and things?
I got one more on Thursday in Rawdon. The Yorkshire one we've often done, had a representative down the years. That's Ben Fernley's gig this year. He's doing that this evening. And yeah, I suppose it's all like, you don't want to say it because you're supposed to go on about how much you love it, but it does get a bit overwhelming at times. You just want to get it started, and to be honest, you want to get it out of the way. It's great fun while it's there, but I think everybody who's got any sense to them is delighted when it comes round to the last race on Friday. All your work is done, and you can then just chill out and relax on the weekend. When it's a small matter of the Midlands National, I was there last year and it was snowing, so I'll avoid that ignominy this time at least.
I was asking that earlier actually, it's good you bring it up. Has the Midlands National always followed the Cheltenham Festival? It's a rookie question this. I always thought in years gone by it was the week after Cheltenham, or am I just completely getting muddled up?
I think it's probably because the gap now is only one day, because it now runs to Friday, the Cheltenham Festival. In the past it'd be Thursday, and then you might have a 2-day build up to it. But yeah, I always remember that being normally run on dreadful ground. It was last year as well, won by Regal Flow, I think. Sean Houlihan rode that, and it was just a typical renewal last year. And it is sort of, while people are recovering from the hangovers, you've then got to get up for it with even less preparation these days, with only a day to go out.
So that was a novice-y question from me, which is a good job that I'm not asking the questions tonight. If you want to ask a question, we've managed to set up the laptop without any hiccups, which is remarkable. So me and Dan can see exactly what's going on.
I can see as well, like you say, it's also remarkable how shiny my head is. I don't know. Vaseline.
It's a filter that we've set up on the phone, so we can see your comments as they come in. If you want to ask Dan a question, it's very simple. Just click in the right comment box, type away, and then press enter, and we'll see it pretty quickly.
Unless you're distracted by the light bouncing off my forehead.
Absolutely. So while we wait for the questions to roll in and have a steady stream, I've got some Blue Peter pre-prepared questions for you.
Okay.
Which are very exciting.
Yep.
And thought we'd start nice and easy really. And looking at the favourites for the festival, I count about 5 short price favourites this year, which are in front. Beanie Desir in the Mares Novice, Tiger Roll in the cross country even, Swerik in the Triumph, Altior in the Champion Chase, and Paisley Park in the World Hurdle.
Yeah.
Which one of those would you be most inclined to take on, or are all 5 of them absolute bankers in your opinion?
I'm taking one on is probably the mare, Beanie Desir, because you can't really apply normal and conventional thought process when it comes to some of these Mullins horses, because for years he did it with Quevega, bringing her back without having had a run. He did it in the World Hurdle last season, or Stayers Hurdle as it is again nowadays, with Penhill off a layoff 12 months ago, that horse missing it. But the fact that horse is missing it this time around shows that it can't just be a set plan, give him a break, come back a year later. You don't put a horse in training to run once a year, do you? It's just not, unless you've got a bottomless pit, as probably Rich Ritchie has, it's not really financially viable, is it, to put all your eggs in one basket? So I never believe that must be the plan. So he's a horse who's coming back again, layoff, short price, not a stronger race as last season when Apple's Jade was up against her, but there's probably a bit of depth to it, and it's more how much do you trust a horse to give its running when you're being asked to take such a short price. Tiger Roll will almost certainly win. He's got loads in hand on the Timeform figures. I really like Paisley Park as a horse, and I think he's probably about the price he should be now. Can't see defeat for Altior. He's the best horse in training. I've been very impressed by Sir Eric as well, so I'm going with the mare, and it's not a reflection of her chance on the book. It's a reflection of her profile as much as anything. How can she come and do it off another long absence, as she did 12 months ago, when I think, off the top of my head, fitness was less of a concern.
Quickly touch back on Tiger Roll, because I think he's a really curious case. Obviously, this isn't the main aim for him. It'd be nice if they won the cross country, but all systems are going to be for Aintree next month. And growing up, he wasn't prone to throwing in the odd stinker. Do you think he's grown out of that now? Or
I do, yeah. I don't know why, but for him to do what he did the other week over that trip over hurdles suggests, dare we say, that he's come back better than he ever has. And to say he's by authorised, he's basically flatbred. So everything he's done in terms of stamina, you couldn't have predicted based on pedigree. Everything he's done in terms of ability, you couldn't have predicted after he won just a market raising juvenile hurdle. So he, bit like the Mullins factor in the training ranks, his profile books so many generalisations that you might have about horses. And we know, and we get told every year, and the record does give you reason to back that up, that winning the National a second time is a very, very difficult task. It's been so long since it was achieved. And I suppose you get carried away every year. I remember thinking it of many clouds that he could come back and do it. But the way that Tiger Roll won over hurdles, it isn't inconceivable to believe he's returned in even better form, a better horse, which is unimaginable really, given the amount of racing he's had. And if that is the case, then with the suitability of the track for him, the proven stamina, I do think he is the most likely to repeat. We've seen in ages. But before then, they've got this free hit, if you like, that's what it is. The weights are already out. He can't affect his handicap mark for Aintree. He's in a race where we know he's a standout, and not only is he a standout, he dotted up in it 12 months ago. So, yeah, it's not the number one aim. I'm sure they'd swap a win in a cross-country in the cross-country if it meant they could have a second Grand National on his CV. But there's no reason why they have to be mutually exclusive. You could easily see both.
Okay, so we'll give it a go now and see what the viewers want to know. Peter Meadows has asked about Timeform large Ps. Are there any heading into Cheltenham that spring to mind straight away, and any that stand out?
There's definitely a smattering, but I suppose when you're looking at large Ps, we talk about significant improvement with horses. So many of them are the types of horses you might imagine. We don't have anything, for instance, that's say top 2 or 3 in the ratings with a large P attached to him. But if you can get your code of your Timeform black book, or if you get the 5-day cards on race passes, you will get access to all those sort of things.
Okay, lovely bit of sales there. Actually, I've been going top to bottom. I've been going the wrong way. So it's Peter Meadows' time to shine again, because he was the first question actually asking about handicaps. The weights only came out last Wednesday, so it's plausible to think that you're still looking through these things. But is there anything that stood out as a really good bet in those at the moment?
2, one of which I might say for the ATR piece I'm doing, but the other I won't. I'll unashamedly say is Any Second Now. The difficulty being, I'm not sure 100% what his target is going to be. And I think most people hear his name and think, well, he's a dodge pot, finishes second all the time, yet to win a race over fences. It says a fair bit that you can have a horse who goes off 5-1 fav for the Close Brothers last season, wind the clock forward a year, and he's still qualified for the race because he hasn't won a maiden or a novice or anything since over fences. But I'm not sure it does him justice. He showed in the Paddy Power over Christmas that he's well equipped to cope with a big field handicap, and I thought it was a proper eye catcher the other week in the 10-up. He was in touch at the third last, but he wasn't fluent there. And after that, I didn't think he got an unduly hard ride, and I really liked the way he opened up on the running. He got back up for third. He was closing all the while on the first 2. It may be deemed a negative, of course, that it's a horse who's yet to win a race over fences, and he's going there looking a bit more exposed than most. But I dare say he's not been almost in a position to be primed that many times in his chasing career so far. And let's not pretend that having that extra experience isn't a good thing, because he's been around. He didn't delivering the race last season, but he wasn't beaten miles, and extra experience like that can only be a good thing when you're dealing with a field of novices, most of whom will have had maybe 3 or 4 starts only.
Okay, so Ben asks about the Grand Annual and Magic Saint in particular. Has that one stood out for you as a real contender?
He's a horse in focus in that race. He's one of few P's. I always say this, that the Grand Annual is a race full of exposed horses every year. So if you can get something that is a bit lower mileage, and examples of that would be him, they'd certainly be Not Another Muddle, horse I really, really like for that. He's top rated for the race with Timeform. He had a long while off prior to reappearance, but you wouldn't have known it. He'd won his first 2 starts in chases, and he resumed in a really strongly run Sandown Handicap. Gino Trail, who was placed in the Grand Annual last season, forced the pace that day, so it was a searching test. Dolos won it, and he ran on Saturday in the Great Gold Cup and just didn't get the trip. Looked like he was a big danger for a long way. And Not Another Model just sort of cruised around, really. He was a remarkable reappearance display, to say. He didn't look like he missed a beat during his absence, and after that promising third, he went to Sandown again next time, won in really good style. Again, it was his jumping and his travelling that really impressed. Looks tailor-made. Now, I don't think, as a rule, around Cheltenham Chase Course, you want to be dropped out too far back. Horses like Belvano have done it, Frenchman's Creek, but nowadays the course is narrowed for most of the season. It can get a bit messy if you try to make headway at certain points, but it's always a strongly run race, this, and I just think that he's well equipped to cope with the demands of it, despite him having so little racing. And it's as ever, it's a balancing act. You think his lack of experience might be a drawback. At the same time, that lack of experience can be a good thing, because it means we've yet to see what he's got. And what he's looked to have so far, Nick, has been like all the hallmarks of a really good quality 2-mile chaser. And I don't think it's beyond the realms that we're talking about a graded horse in time. And if that is the case, then I think a Grand Annual for marking the 130s is a nice stepping stone.
Right, so one very much to take seriously then.
Yeah.
What price is he at the moment? I've got all the prices in front of us, so we should be able to...
He's not even in the betting.
Goodness
Oh
me.
no, he is. He's 14s.
Yeah, okay.
But Magic's he's twice the price of Magic Saint. It was a really interesting horse course here. So you sit up and take notice when you see these Nichols horses like that. But he's more untested almost than Not Another Model in many ways, who has done it in a properly run race over big fences at Sandown and just coped with it took to it like a duck to water. Horses like Hell's Kitchen in the market for this. We know he's got loads of ability. He hasn't always shown it for whatever reason, but he was very good the other day at Ascot in a race that looks like a strong piece of form. So it's, if anything, there's probably fewer exposed ones than we normally get in this race this time around, but I'm still really swayed by Not Another Muddle. And there's a horse there, Us and Them, who's in the market as well, who may even go Arkle now, the way I'm reading it, because he's trained by Joseph. Joseph's had Laricheburg ruled out. Is there going to be sufficient sway to think, well, he's a place contender in that? I looked, he was about 16s, 20s for it. He's a bit like a Glenforcer, really assured jumper. He's running to Laricheburg on his last 2 starts and not been able to match him, but no disgrace in that. And if they decide he's more for the Arkle, he might be one to consider at a bigger price, but if he took his chance in the Grand Annual and waited for that again, you'd be interested.
Yeah, I don't want to touch on the Arkle too much in case there's a question about it, but it certainly looks feasible that something could run into a place at a price.
Yeah, you look. I agree. I think there are holes in loads of the market principles. I don't think there are any holes in Glenforcer. I can't find any. But Lawler, where's he been since the flop at Sandown? Was it just ground? The day he was so impressive here, I put in inverted commas because they could not have played into his hands anymore that day. They dawdled around in front, claiming taking forward dictated. They just set it up for a faster finisher, and he was that. He just did them for speed. So holes in him. Kalashnikov got his backside handed to him by Glenforcer. He's not only has he got to reverse form with that horse, he's got to really bounce back from what was a subdued performance.
I think he was a miss that day. I think it was just walloped.
Possibly. I don't think you can say. Well, it certainly wasn't his running, was it? I mean, if you think he ran to his best, you're rating Glenforcer about 180. He's the best since Cartoon Sprinter Sacre, so you can't take it too literally. But in terms of how the race went and who did what you want to see from the potential Arkle winner, then Glenforsa was that. It was a display of bold jumping. You can tell he's got connections with Hen Knight, can't you? Who'd think does all the schooling on these Mick Shannon trained jumpers, and that very much showed because he just looks like an old hand. And I think people will probably hold his hurdling form against him, but what do we really know about him? He had about 2 or 3 starts, didn't mess around. He was straight over fences pretty much. So I almost think that's a bit of an irrelevance. It's not like we're dealing with a 140 rated handicap hurdler who had 7 or 8 starts in handicaps and has gone chasing. He was an unknown quantity anyway, and everything about him suggests that he's a significantly better chaser anyway.
Okay, we'll see what else is coming in then. Sean's just asked, good tips, please.
Tips, yeah.
Good
Okay.
I mean, I suppose they'll come in the meantime, and we'll move on to the next one.
I hope all of them are good, but
yeah,
it's one of those where I don't know. Before the festival, you're so bullish about something. You almost feel like you're compelled to be. You talk about horses like you're dealing with the selling hurdle at Leicester or something. There's like 25 horses in these handicaps, and you're telling them that only one can possibly win it, and then you have a look at yourself and think, what are you talking about? You know, you can't be that strong about it.
Well, Scott's asked an interesting question because we were actually talking about short price fancies at the start of the broadcast. That was the word I'm looking for, and he's just asked about 3 of them. What do you think about Sir Eric, Beanie Disdieu and Tiger Roll in a treble?
We've dissed to some degree the middle of those. Nothing massively against it. Just the question was which of the shorter price ones are you least minded to back. The other 2, Sir Eric and Tiger Roll, we discussed Tiger Roll's claims and how obvious they are. I like what Sir Eric has done. He was a horse of real quality on the flat.
Liked him on the flat, never mind over jumps.
Exactly, with not much racing behind him. To reach like 118, 119 Timeform on the flat, that's borderline Group 2, Group 3, Group 1 class. I mean, that's
Chasestone Stradivarius, yeah.
Indeed, yeah. So we're talking here a serious talent who, judged by the way he jumped the other week, he's taken to hurdling really, really well. Might even be as good over hurdles, which is some statement, but he's done absolutely everything right. I know it was a bit of a farce race. He was allowed a soft lead. None of his stablemates took him on. But you want to see these horses jump fluently, and I think it was the second last where he gets in too close basically, but he was nimble enough to really whip his way over it all the same. Sir Eric, yes. Tiger, yes. Benny a bit.
Would you substitute one of the other 2 in, Altior or Paisley Park or something else?
Yeah, the rest, Altior will have to fall over. I want you to not win, probably. None of those. Yeah, he is sort of one you would put in because only mishap can cost him, or him running appallingly. He's never run appallingly in his life. He's been a tremendously consistent animal, still to taste defeat over jumps, with the most beautiful way of going about things. Keeps a bit back for himself, but once he opens up, nothing can match him. I actually think he'd win any race he ran in. King George, Champion Hurdle. I think he could do them all, but maybe he could go through the card, win a race on the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then have enough left for the Gold Cup on Friday.
I'm hogging the limelight a bit here, but with Altior, it's interesting because he may or may not line up footpad, but if he does line up, we know how good he was in the Arkle last year. Did he run to 180 on Timeform ratings? If he, I know he's disappointed slightly so far this season, but if he ran to that level, how close would he theoretically be able to push Altior?
It's hard that, because much though we're a ratings organisation, we know there's a lot more to it than that. There's so much feel associated. I think basically what would happen is footpad running in that style he did last season. Well, to be honest, everything went for him, didn't it? The leaders took each other on. It was almost like Masterminded's first champion chase, where everything was there to produce something off the scale. But if there's another race that unfolds in a similar manner, then the horse it's going to suit even more than footpad is Altior. So fingers crossed from the view of wanting to witness something breathtaking, like Masterminded was first time. Like I think he was beating under so this year, Altior at Sandown. They are maybe the circumstances in which it's produced, and if it suits footpad, it'll suit Altior at least as much, and I think he's just a better horse and a stronger stayer anyway.
Okay, on now to Dean, who wants to know about the Irish horses that are coming over to Cheltenham. There's plenty
A few of those, I think, yeah.
Yeah, plenty of
That'd be
them. He's asked for your nap, so which ones do you think have the strongest chance of the Irish charge? There's plenty to choose from.
Well, giving a good mention to any second now. Tiger Roll's clearly. I think if the Irish go back home on the Friday evening and they've had only one winner, like it will be Tiger Roll. But the bigger price, I mentioned any second now, mentioned Us and Them as an interesting horse for either an Arkle or a Grand Annual. I think in terms of the champion hurdle, I'm sure we'll get questions about, is it Apples, is it Boover? Apples and Dares, as I like to christen them. But I'm going to go for another fruit. I thought Melon was overpriced. I understand why people don't warm to him. He runs his race once in a blue moon, but the day when he was expected, seemingly, and the day he was supposed to run right up to his very best, that was finishing second in the champion hurdle last season. Now, if you're a Leicester City fan or a Leicester City player, just because you haven't got anywhere near the title in years before or since you won the league, you can't have that title taken away from you. You can't have Buster Douglas can't have that knockout of Mike Tyson taken away from him, and Ben Curtis or Todd Hamilton can't have their major wins in golf taken away from them just because the rest of their career doesn't match up.
And Wigan Athletic can't have the FA Cup.
Yeah. Forgot that. Yeah, Wigan can't have that FA Cup. Oh, what a bad day that was.
I can't remember.
I think it was a horrific day. I've raised it from memory, and it rained as we left Wembley. But so by the same token, just because Mellon's form hasn't matched up to that career standout so far, doesn't mean that he wasn't full value for it. And I'm firmly of the opinion that, as with a lot of horses, I might mention about Manella Rocco in one of the handicaps later. I'm not bothered what's gone before almost that season because I don't think it's of any relevance to them, to Connections. And I don't think it's of great significance to Connections because they'll have had just this one day in mind.
So, Mark Taylor, I wonder if that's football Mark Taylor or whether it's a different Mark Taylor.
Two of them around.
Yeah, tricky to tell. I think it's a different Mark. Yeah, it's a different Mark Taylor. He's asking about the ground. A couple have pulled out today. He says, can you see any other big names pulling out between now and the festival? I assume really it depends on the rain.
Yeah, they might be. I mean, a few of those that have come out today have been, seems Elliott and Gigginstown making a bit of a stand. Although Jeski was one of a couple of Manus horses taken out because they don't think the handicap marks are fair as much as anything. But I think he doth protest too much because if you think back to 3 years, was it 3 years ago now? 2 festivals ago? Yeah, it was 2 festivals ago. We were told that Presenting Percy had been treated so badly by the British handicapper he couldn't possibly win. He won the Pertemps and he's now favourite for a Gold Cup, so it's all relative. I mean, there is a scale between the two, so British handicappers are rating these horses that are running in Ireland and they will have inflated marks when they come over here, but some of them just prove different horses away from the mud that they're normally obliged to race on, and also in a race that tests them properly rather than just like a small field conditions race. They can just flourish in a bigger field.
No, I think the rain, we can see it's raining outside. The rain is coming sufficiently, but if it did stay the level of good that it has been throughout the winter, do you think plenty will drop out that need it, like Native River? I'm thinking of. Do you think because it's the Gold Cup, because it's Cheltenham, they'll just chuck them in?
They probably run them on firm, and it will never be firm. And in fact, what Connections of Native River and his backers, of which I'd be a supporter as well, will want is as much rain as possible. Last year was a freak. We don't want to get onto the climate change, global warming debate. That's for more complex minds than ours. But at the same time, last year, taken in a historical context, was a rarity. It's so unusual for the ground to be heavy, as we called it, throughout the festival. So the likelihood is it probably will revert to something more like the usual good to soft, in which case there'd have to be some serious reliance on a certain type of conditions for trainers to be taking it out of a meeting at which they've probably been building up to for 12 months.
Carl or Alan even has commented, I think you've already answered this though, Bouvidere or Apples Jade. Touched on it at least.
I find that really hard because look at the Timeform ratings. Apples Jade's getting 7. She's 7 clear of Bouvidere. But it's just, I don't know. There's something I just really like Bouvidere. Was it Newcastle in the season when take away weights and measures and the geeky side of it. Just to see how fast a horse runs, like take racing down to its barest form. Just to be at the rails as Bouvardere began to sprint away from Sanko in that fighting fifth was like hairs on the back of your neck sort of moment. It was that impressive. That's hard to get out of my mind. The fluency of his hurdling is hard to get out of my mind. I know he's got a tendency to hit the odd one, and when he hits them, because he jumps so low, he belts them. But when he's right, I mean, he's over within a matter of seconds. And the thing about that you know about him is he's been and done it twice before, whereas Apples Jade is in a position different to 12 months ago, where she was considered a certainty in many quarters to win the mares race, and she wasn't even able to do that. And I don't know if it's Cheltenham, I don't know if it's something sort of physical with her, but there's a bigger concern about the track for her than there is about Bouvardere, who's going for this hat-trick.
What have you thought about, more from your perspective than Timeform's, about her performances so far this season? Because she's absolutely routed the field every single time she's turned up.
I know, and it's a bit like I was saying a bit with Mellon in some ways, like having a career standout. And for her in the early days, it was what she did at Aintree in the juvenile, where she won by a ridiculous margin.
I forgot about that, yeah.
And then it was always judging her against that, really, but no doubt she's full value for given what she's done since. She looks better than ever. I don't know what Fahim's really capable of nowadays. Super Sunday likewise. So I think potential holes in the form, but yeah, she's brilliant. And when you get a mare who's that good, then the £7 is just a massive thing, isn't it? It's a bit like Enable on the flat, say. They're as good as the boys, and then they've got the added, and they're as developed as the boys, and they have the added benefit of being able to receive weight from them.
So, Brian has asked about, well, very ground specific. What ground do you think it's going to be like on the first day of the festival? It's difficult to say, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know.
They're going to water it, so it's not going to be firm. It's not going to be. It's going to be good to soft at the very least, isn't it?
Yeah, you need Lucy Verasamy or John Kettley to answer that. I don't have a clue. There's a question there that's quite interesting. We could do that. Scott Holmes mentioned each way look 15, which we could talk about. But there's one slightly just below that, the next one down. Simon Scott. This is a worrying one for me. Is Santini running, as I've heard he was drifting today? No, I've not seen that.
I've seen on Twitter that he lost a shoe while working, I think yesterday, and I think he had a minor injury, but I didn't read too much into it. But Matt Chapman was tweeting that he'd been drifting like a barge.
Oh, right, okay, well that's great, because I thought he was potential nap material. So cheers for pointing that out, Simon. I can have less on him now.
So we'll go back to the each way lucky 15 then. It's putting you very much on the spot, but there's some kind of odds there if you'd like to.
Well, if we look at each way, Glenn Forster would be one of them.
In the Arkle? In the
Arkle, yeah.
Is he a place cert for you in the Arkle? Or as close as
I think he's got so many positive tools to cope with a race like that. I think it may sound a bit boring, but Angel's Breath, probably in the Supreme. I like Al Dancer a lot, but he's half the price. Angel's Breath made me a believer of him the other day at Kempton, where it was a completely different test to his first run. He came with his reputation. I think a well-run Supreme will suit him down to the ground. We've got to be looking at the mares race, surely, for an each-way bet, given we've got Benny de Dieu and we've said something negative. Maybe Roxana, pick her way through the field. Winner of the mares final last season, she might be alright for picking up the pieces late.
Imagine she won't be 10s next week either, because I don't think Lorena and Apples Jade are going to turn up, are they, on the bar?
No, of course. And I was going to mention Santini, so I've been a bit scuppered by that. So if Santini's in one piece, I'd stick with him. But an absolutely...
there you go.
Okay.
So there's...
My very long hand just came and got a phone. Santini lost a shoe yesterday as a precautionary measure. It's been poulticed, blah, blah, blah. Should that change, I will update accordingly. Pretty sure it's not Nicky Wright's those. I don't think he's checking his phone every 5 minutes, is he?
Yeah.
What about in the bumper for an absolute... It wouldn't be an absolute boil over, but the horse that we're most keen on here at Timeform is Getting the Queue for Harry Fry.
Right.
Aggregate wins of 25 lengths over 2 starts. Looks the real deal. Bigger price because he's not Irish trained, and it's tended to be a race the Irish have dominated. Willie runs Blue Sari. Gordon's relying now on Envoyal. I think after Malone Road was injured a fair while ago now, been really impressed with getting the queue, and I'm convinced he's a very good horse. Whether he's too big and raw to cope with a champion bumper, I'm not so sure. But it'd be a nice fourth leg if we can get other three on the board as well.
Excuse me. Sorry, I didn't offer you any
Don't drink that.
unspecified diet drink.
I'm fat enough without
it's diet, so you know.
Falling off you.
What else we got now? With 30 minutes left to go, so keep your comments coming in. We've got
Good
26 queued up.
Stephen Shotton, hello Stephen. Any views on Nicky Henderson's mare Elusive Bell? This is your job, isn't it? Sorry, do you want to read it out?
No, you carry on. You're doing a great job.
Well, I'll tell you what. I'll ask you. In January was impressive in a good time. 20-1 on Betfair. Our paymasters. Do you think she will run? Your views and a chance, please. Great question, because she's a mare I think's got loads and loads of ability. So much toe. So this background 3 runs for Peter Fye in Ireland in Irish bumpers, didn't win any of them but got better by the run. Starts out for Henderson and the Whaley Cohens, goes off 4-5 to beat a horse rated about 130 that had already won twice. Didn't just beat it, embarrassed it really. I mean, sent home crying to his mummy was this'll do nicely. Just trailing in the wake of this really speedy horse, a flatbred horse, not an obvious one that Henderson might get. Then went to Sandown, and it was, you know what Sandown's like, probably the most punishing finish on testing ground in the country, alongside Toaster, the much missed Toaster. And she made this move between 3 out, which she just walked through, to early in the straight, which was just that of a horse with a serious engine. Carted Sam Whaley Cohen. This will be a completely different test. It's not going to be bad, really bottomless ground, I don't think. It's going to be a bigger field, so there's more chance of a settling. I think if she coped well enough jumping wise, and she's in the first couple, maybe 2 or 3 entering the straight, nothing will live with her burst of pace, I don't think, as long as it isn't bottomless and she can get run out of it. Horses like Posh Trish, really admirable, but not stars. I think she's got the scope in that Dawn run to be almost star material, and I don't think there's a Lorena lurking this time around, as we had to see last year when we were dealing with a very, very short price. So it's probably a pretty good betting race that for that reason.
We've got odds up in front of us. It's Thursday, isn't it?
I've checked her because it's a mare I was very interested in before even Steven replied. 20s, but it's a bit mixed out. It's 20s with Betfair, but a lot shorter in some places, which almost makes you think that there's perhaps some doubt about participation. But I don't know which firms are, but there's plenty of number and no bet. I know Fred's number and no bet at the minute. I'm sure Paddy's and Betfair will be all over similar as well.
So we've talked about Benny Desir a few times now.
Evan Williams, it's not the same one, I'm pretty sure, but he says...
Get his photo up if you like, so you can see who you're speaking to.
Given the content of the message, I'm not sure I want to. Red Indian bolts up in the Close Brothers as I'm wearing my lucky pants. I don't know if that means that he's wearing his lucky pants as the horse bolts up, or it bolts up because he's wearing his lucky pants. Evan Williams' lucky pants.
Or if he's just wearing them all the time and never takes them off.
Yeah.
Do you agree with that? No.
I think it's got a...
Been beaten a few times this season.
Yeah, it's done all right actually for the new stable. Fair play to them. Won at Weatherby, it's taken to fences very well. Bit off it more than it could chew last time probably, but yes, it's such a hard race that I've already mentioned any second now for that as a horse. I think will go well. I'm
going to carry on bringing these pitches up. So yeah, Not Another Muddle is who we were talking about. You're fancying the Grand Annual.
Yes.
Can you tell Paul Morris about Animix? Is there anything you can tell about the Mullins horse?
Not loads, no. I'm thinking of Animix being the Jessica Harrington horse that wins the same race every year. So if that's with Mullins now, then forgive me there, Paul. I'm out of the loop with that. Is Faheen any value at 4-1 for the stayers? No, that's an interesting one, isn't it?
He was a lot bigger earlier. Even last month, is definitely going to be where he's going, or is it still a bit up in the air?
There's no Penhill now. That's one horse out of the way. I think people have collectively come to the opinion that last year's wasn't a great race. And I'm sure fresh in the mind for many is not just his back class and what he was capable of in his pomp, but what he did at Punchestown last season. But the balance, a bit like Mellon, the balance of his form isn't up to that. In the case of Mellon, you're being asked to take double figure prices. With Faheen, you're being asked to take 4. So I just wouldn't want to back him each way, do you know what I mean? Because he's got such capacity to blow out as he did in the Champion Hurdle. Maybe he just really needs 3 miles nowadays, and that's the making of him. But I sort of sense there's something more underlying with him. He's 11 now. If he comes back, it's no dry eye in the house territory, but I don't think he's going to do a sprint to Sacre. I think it's too much to ask.
And he's facing as well an unexposed rival potentially in Paisley Park that we've already mentioned. He could be better, yeah.
Yeah, but you go ages waiting for a progressive stayer, and then 2 came together in successive years. One of them, Sam Spinner, the wheels are off now, it seems. But Paisley Park ran in the Ascot race that Sam Spinner had won the year before, Long Walk, and then pressed on again, which I like. They went to Cheltenham on Trials Day when you were down there, instead of like hanging fire and putting them away. None of that nonsense, putting them away for Cheltenham. When a horse is thriving like that, and perhaps there's probably in the case of Joe Key, probably never been in that position very often when it comes to the Cheltenham Festival. Never been in it, I dare say. So I think in Sam Spinner, that the way they've handled him has been perfect. And if you think back to what he did, there was a race at Aintree on his reappearance in a handicap where there were barely any flights jumped. It should have been a complete speed test that wouldn't have suited him, and he overcame it, passed it with flying colours. We saw him surge to the front of Haydock to win the handicap there, and he's just going from strength to strength. I don't know what you can find in him that's a negative, really. Trajectory like that in terms of his form, proven at the course, an out-and-out stayer, but not a slow boat. I think he can cope with any sort of scenario. I think it's not like Sam Spinner, who we saw out last year, who is ridden in a certain way, and there might be an issue over whether the jockey gets it right. Then you don't really have that with Paisley Park because he's not reliant on a certain set of tactics.
So interestingly, the bloke Morris who's asking about Faheen has actually backed him at 8s, but he's more asking whether he should go back in, and your answer is no.
Not if you back the 8s. I mean, if you've already backed him at 8s and you're thinking going back in at 4s, you're basically thinking he's what, a 5-2 chance. Can you really say that against Paisley Park? I don't think you can.
Well, what we thought was 30 queued up questions is actually this ongoing conversation between these two lads talking about Faheen. So fair play.
More
but it doesn't help us though. Yeah. What do you think about Highway 101?
Oh, your boss has joined, watch out.
Yeah, should we say good evening to him. What do you think about Highway 101's chances in the Close Brothers at 16s?
Do like that horse. I get the sense though, there's going to be probably 7 or 8 of them going from the front in that race. And he's one who's sort of reliant on those tactics. He's a very sound jumper. He's proven significantly better over fences than he was over hurdles. But is he going to have enough in hand of his handicap mark, given he's had a fair few starts now, to think he can just dominate a race like that from the front? And again, I wouldn't want to back him each way because he's got such blowout potential. If he gets taken on and either sulks or his jumping suffers or they go too hard, then he's not going to be hanging on for a place, is he? So I'd rather back him win only if I was going to back him at all, which I don't think I will do. Okay,
we're nearly catching up now with questions, so if you do want to ask Dan anything, we will see it straight away. Just click in the comments box at the bottom. The next question, we'll skip to this one because it's straight to the point. Tom, who wins the Supreme?
We've
got the odds.
I'm going to do in this race, I never mind backing 2 against the field. I'm going to back Al Dancer and Angel's Breath. So I'm basically putting all my eggs in the Di Walters basket. Al Dancer's a bit different. Like Twister's won the better hurdle with like Splash of Ginge and Ballyandy before having a crack at the Supreme. Splash of Ginge was $1 million really in the Supreme, and Ballyandy I thought had a chance but wasn't up to it. But they're sort of grinding types, whereas Al Dancer's just got a bit of quality and speed. I thought I've loved him ever since he was in the frame in the Aintree bumper where he came from a ridiculous position. But he's proven himself a very fluent hurdler. He won at Ascot despite pulling really hard and being stuck up the inside, but quick into the front like a smart animal. I think you've got to say he is a worthy favourite on the book, but Angel's Breath has something of of the unknown about him still, and just has an air that he could be extremely good. So you're talking here, that one run at Ascot where they barely jumped a flight and he lapped Danny Kirwan. Then he runs in a proper race at Kempton after the layoff, and I think he'll just sharpen up so much from that, being involved in a proper race in which he conceded first run to Southfield Stone in the Dovecote. Surely he'll learn so much from that. And I think people think he's a staying type, he probably wants 2.5, but I think strongly run 2 will be absolutely perfect for him at this stage. And I don't think there's loads of depth to this. I think Mr. Fisher's done well for Nicky Henderson. He too's got a lot of toe. Grandson C put himself right in the mix with that upsetting of Sorrel when he ran at Wincanton the other week. So horses like that are there strictly based on the form book. But Al Dancer's got quality about him, and Angel's Breath really has. 100 to 30 and 6s. Backing those 2 Dutch, I don't think will be a terrible start to your festival. I think you'll be on the winner.
When it comes to our Dancer, would you read too much into the form that happened at Kelso on Saturday, and that's Getaway Trump? He was 4th, not far behind our Dancer in the Betfair hurdle, and really disappointed.
Yeah, it was ranked, wasn't it? It was a bad, Nichols, as he proved on Saturday again elsewhere by winning the Greatwood Gold Cup for the 15,000th time. His placing of horses is unparalleled and going for opportunities, but it's a big schlep up to Kelso, and whether that was linked to it or not, neither of his horses that had outstanding chances at the weights fired. And I suppose they're in the position now where they might think, should we have done that? Should we have just waited? So he was a horse I thought shaped extremely well in that Betfair hurdle. You could take it as a blow to that form, but I'm disinclined to do that. And if you're going to grab the bear form, you're probably looking at Blue Cavalier finishing 3rd at 100 to 1 off a mark of about 142. But it's more about Al Dancer's just his style and his quality. He's got so much dash and speed, which is exactly what you want for a Supreme, as long as the ground isn't bottomless.
Any fancy for Itchy Feet could get a good toe in? I've been smacking about that for 2 minutes.
Is that what you were smiling at? I thought you had something on my face.
No, I thought about it.
Shiny forehead. No, out of principle for that terrible gag, I'm going to say no.
Fair enough. Someone's asking about Willie Mullins. I know that was the conversation that we've been trying to avoid. Yeah.
I'm working at Timeform. I'm not Mystic Meg. I don't know what goes through Willie's head.
We've talked about the worst value favourite for you.
There's one. Daniel Hatter.
Yeah.
What about the Mayor's Novice Hurdle? Epitante looked very good. Short as 5 to 2 in places. She did look very good, and we discussed this race. But as a form book punter, you sort of can't really entertain her at that sort of price. But in the back of your mind, you think, well, she could just be something special. She hasn't had to leave the bridle. She was a group, I think they call it group racing or in bumpers in France instead of graded racing, was top notch in that sphere. Completely unexposed. And we had the question about large P's. That might be first cab off the rank if you're thinking of which large P horse at the festival for Timeform is most likely to justify it with something way in advance of what it's done on the book. Then it would be Epitante, who's completely open book, really.
Tom's asked, do you think Sam Crow will run, and if so, where?
No, mixed feelings. I think I said on one of the, if it wasn't on one of these, it was one of my other Rent-A-Gob appearances somewhere else. About how Sam Crow at the start of the season was clearly a better bet at a bigger price for a Stayers than was for a Champion Hurdle, particularly after he'd been beaten twice. But now, because that's become clear that if he runs, that's the race he's going for, then all value's gone again. Nominal no bets in your favour there, but it's one thing if you're backing him at 20s or 25s for a Stayers because it looks like he's going to go for the Champion, nominal no bet, than having to take 5 to 1. Significantly shorter price about a horse who, in essence, has had an underwhelming season, hasn't he? And he's had this apparent setback.
Another Gigginstown horse, Ryan's asking, what do you think about Battle Over Doyen?
Yeah, I've been impressed with him. I'm assuming to the 20 furlong race, Old Neptune will be the one they go for, the Bear and Bingham. Yeah, well, must have a good chance. I mean, just
wide open, that, isn't it?
It is, yes. Yeah. That's traditionally... I always think that's the hardest of the novices. The Stayers one is probably the staying one. The Albert Bartlett has probably thrown up bigger prices and bigger shocks. But I think in terms of when you settle down to win, it's often a very short one who people think's a certainty in that race. We had it with the Gigginstown horse a year or so ago. Then we had it with Santini last year. The Neptune always seems to be like, until Samco last year, it seems to be like a 4-to-1 the field job.
Mm.
What wins the Gold Cup?
What wins the Gold Cup?
I'm gonna go Native River and then perm any two of Album Photo, Bells Hill and Road to Respect to chase him home. Just do like exactas, straight forecast, whatever. I think I was negative in many ways about Native River after the first 2 runs, thinking, well, you're taking a fair bit on trust that he is suddenly going to transform for Cheltenham. But the more you look at it, you want to think
he's gone down fighting, hasn't he, twice when it's not been to suit him at all.
No, it hasn't, and he's a genuinely top class staying chaser with the accent on staying there, because that's exactly what he does. And for Mike Bite to loom up to him last year and him just to fend him off was, as Martin Rigg, our hurdles handicapper, sort of described him in not as many words, just said he's everything you want in a Gold Cup horse, isn't he? He's the archetypal Gold Cup horse, a strong galloping staying type who jumps well and is blessed with loads and loads of stamina. And a few perhaps aren't guaranteed having that, and in case of presenting Percy, he's having the most wacky prep for Cheltenham I've ever seen. And it gets to the point where you respect the apparent genius of the connections who've continued to pull it off despite these going about in a way that most of the trainers and owners wouldn't. But you're obliged to take a short price about a horse who, if it was anybody else, because of the way he's been campaigned, I don't think you'd entertain it.
I mean, I'm a bit disappointed they haven't gone on the all-weather, because they've done everything else, haven't they, really?
Yeah, I know.
So,
he's warmed up for one run over hurdles, not seen over fences since the festival last season. Johnny Gatenby asks, will you have a bet in every race next week? And you start the week thinking no, and by the end of it you try to get out in the Grand Annual, aren't you, to save your week's losses. Would you have an each way bet against Altio and the betting without marking? Now that's quite interesting, because let's have a quick shufty at
could be anywhere at the moment.
At the champ. So.
Oh no, the Jumping Chase is the one that didn't print out properly.
That's convenient.
I can get it up on here.
So it's in opposition to him. So much rests on what the plans are for Mullins. What's Undersow going to do? His footpad definitely going to go for that.
So do you want each way, or do you want without the favourite?
Well, in the without the favourite is the most interesting, because I don't think we can get the favourite beaten, but maybe Minnie's a dodgier favourite in the without market than Altior is in the main market.
Yeah, so without Altior, it's even money min, 4-to-1 footpad best price, more like 5-2, 11-2 So Roll, 8-1 and
Decided.
10s Lady Buttons, Fox Norton, 12s Bar.
Oh, this I'd probably just go So Royale, and it's without thinking necessarily he's a certainty to place, but he's one of those who might get a ride that means he's not involved trying to beat the likes of Altio. He might just pick his way through and grab a place later on. Okay. Hopefully second. It reminds me of one of the like the most stressful small winning for the effort and what it yielded was one year I backed the Game Changer each way in the Arkle in the market without Altio, so he only had to finish in the first 4. And he did it after Vanator hit the deck at the second last, and the Game Changer was basically legless. Clung on to 4th, Altio winning the race, like measly return. But it felt like I just backed a 20-1 winner, because I thought, well, you can't possibly finish place, do you?
Gareth wants to know about Frodon. He's interesting. He's asked what chance he has in the Ryanair, but is he going to go for the Ryanair? Is he going to go for the
they're going to go for the big one, aren't they?
Yeah. Will he stay?
No, I don't think he will. I don't think he'll be good enough either.
Because he was really good at Cheltenham, and he generally, I think he's just a high-end handicap horse, because whenever he's put in some brilliant performances.
Yeah, actually, at Cheltenham his record is tremendous, but it's normally at shorter distances, and the Cotswold was a bit of it wasn't exactly a searching examination stamina, was it? No, I think he'll be found out. He's definitely saw a good thing in the JLT, also asked Gareth. Now, I'm not sure about that, because he's been to Cheltenham over fences twice, blundered his way around on one of them, and the other cleared the last, or soon after last, looked like the race was his, past lost in translation. He's ended up either getting worried or probably getting outstayed and run down late on. So I'd prefer him in the Arkle actually, and given connections, JP having lost Larichberg, perhaps that's still open. But I try not to, until I'm thinking of having a bet, I really do not try and concern myself with apparent running plans and gossip and noise and stuff like that. If I think that there might be something that's a price, I'll then dig a bit deeper. Elusive Bell being a good example. I would like now some confirmation as to whether this horse is going to go, because the market's all over the show.
I must say though, I think you've got the JLT in front of you rather than me. It does look, I was looking at it earlier for something else we were writing, it does look particularly wide open, the JLT. I think it's another one that hasn't printed off properly actually.
Well, that always is. It's never, amazingly, I saw today, it's only ever been won by a British trained horse once, that was Takan Desai. Glenforsa won't go for it now. Larichberg's gone for the season. Most of these will be going elsewhere.
Top of the game's going to the RSA. So.
Why not just, I just think there might be a repeat of what happened at Cheltenham. It was a dipper, wasn't it, where Defi Desai takes over, looks like the race is his, and then proves vulnerable in the latter stages to a really strong stayer in Lost in Translation, who I think anybody who's seen horses in the paddock and has some idea would have seen him, say, at Chepstow last season when I was there, and just realised immediately this is a horse who fits the archetypal category of whatever he does over hurdles is a bonus, because he's a massive, massive strapping horse, taking to it really well. He gave La Bagoa a real scare first time, giving her weight. I like his form, I like his profile, I like his physique, I like the way that he's progressing so far, and I think he can reverse Sandown form with Defi Desai.
What do you think about the Mullins mare, Camellia de Cop? Because she might not arrive, she might not go to the festival, but she's battered her own sex, hasn't she?
Yeah, I just think you're so much in the dark with these, and that is one stable where I'm definitely not mad keen on backing anti-post without number and no bet concessions, because there's just like a rabbit to be pulled out of the hat every turn, isn't there?
Okay, so the county hurdle winner is generally rated 138, 139. Which one of the 6 on these ratings would you pick this year? Now we don't have the ratings in front of us, so
yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't get too carried away with that. I think that's just almost happenstance. That's the sort of band they're in. It might be only £5 between top and bottom. I don't think you need to be rated 138 or 139. What you need to be is well ahead of your handicap mark. There's one horse that, well, there's going to be loads of horses who are trying to get in there after winning the Imperial Cup, say, which is this weekend. Benny's Bridge was one who caught my eye for that. Back him non-run and no bet, because if he doesn't win the Imperial Cup, then he won't be going to Cheltenham, because he won't be able to get in the race, so he's a possible angle for that. But yeah, I wouldn't think you have to be rated one or the other. You just have to be very well handicapped, whatever your handicap mark is.
Okay, 8 minutes till 7. We are going to cut off pretty soon after that, because I've got a train to go and catch. Okay. So if you do want to ask a question, now is the time. Kitty wants to know what you best each way bet is for next week.
Each way bet for next week. Any second now. Probably where I'd even take a slightly shorter price if you had confirmation of where he was running, but Close Brothers probably any second now would do for me. I think he's going to have a massive payday somewhere, because he's got this ability to do so, and this is the perfect opportunity for it.
We'll go back to the county now, because we've just talked about it. Paul wants to know about Old Guard. Is he value at 40 to 1?
Nah, I couldn't have him now. I mean, we know so much about him. He'll track the pace. He'll get outpaced at a crucial point. He just won't be good enough to get back into it. He's just not a quick enough horse for something like that.
I'll band these two together because they're both about the RSA. Gemma wants to know about Yaltari and the RSA, and then Jason is asking about top of the game in Santini in particular. Santini might not run now. Should he be shorter than Santini on what he's shown?
No, I don't think he should, but now we've obviously got to take it against the backdrop that there's some sort of doubt over his participation. So top of the game, beat Santini at Kemp's, as we know, in the Corto start. I timed it, he was 7 lengths behind at the second last was Santini, and by the line he was 2 lengths behind. So he made up 5 lengths on 2 staying types, and I think he granted Cheltenham's stiffer finish. That would be enough around there to see him reverse forward, but obviously we want to see him get there first.
Yaltari, got enough, good enough, or going to need to find something?
Yeah, definitely. I think probably 8 and 9 to find, something like that, and up against 3 at the top of the betting who could be very, very good.
I think we've already answered this about 5 times, but Graham wants to know your nap of the meeting.
You know what it was going to be? Santini. So I'm sort of scooping. I'll go maybe go Glenn Forser in the absence of Santini. Just very, very much like what he did, and he clocked a much faster time than Not Another Muddle, who I like for the Grand Annual. So I'm pinning my hopes that the 2 mile races at Sandown on that card prove to be a lucrative form angle, because Not Another Muddle goes for the Grand Annual, we think, after his impressive win in the handicap, and on the same card, Glenn Forser just destroyed Kalashnikov, devoured the Sandown fences. I think he'll do the same to the Cheltenham ones. And you mentioned earlier, I think that's a race with loads of doubts about some of the horses. Yeah. People may have doubts about him because he's in a different scenario, but he's done it in a handicap. He's coped with that. Yeah, we'll go for him then.
And to clarify, that's in the Arkle because he's got a couple of entries.
It is in the Arkle, yeah, and it does appear now. I mean, if they'd have said at that stage, "Oh, we're going to go for a handicap instead," you'd have told them they were crazy, because it was never going to happen, was it?
Now, we've touched on him a little bit, but Jack, I'm going to give you an opportunity to extend on it a bit. And presenting Percy, it really is a curious case, isn't it, that he's had just one start over hurdles. He won at Grade 2, but can he honestly win a Gold Cup, having not seen a fence in a race scenario this season? I know he scored the Galway the other week or the other day.
Yeah, he turned the fences around, didn't he? Of course he can. But he's priced up. Look, he's a very, very good horse, and I've thought this about him for ages. He's been beaten maybe once when he's been 100% and ready to win in the last 2 years or so, because he had the winning streak over hurdles, and then Our Duke beat him. Sure how good a horse Our Duke was. Our Duke under the right circumstances was an absolute monster. I know people will think of what he did at Cheltenham and just assume that's a sign of his limitations, but he beat Presenting Percy, giving him weight despite walking through a fence over 2.5. So he was a serious animal, and that's probably the only time Presenting Percy's been chinned, when he's been right to win.
Just about to say about Our Duke, I saw him at Leopardstown in the Irish Gold Cup last year, and jumping was his. I remember he absolutely took off the fence with him.
I know. Sounds a bit rude, but some horses are a bit thick, aren't they? I think he was a bit dense and never really learned from what had happened. A bit like a few centre halves that he used to have back in the day. They'd head anything, but perhaps not the most intelligent.
So
Mark Day fancies over when you had to serve it up to Tiger Roll. It's fair enough, yeah. Very
two absolute bets, aren't they?
Yeah, and a horse with a fair bit of back class, the right connections to think that he'll be well equipped.
Is that Edna, or is that not Edna?
Don't be so disrespectful to her.
I know, yeah.
Yeah, I think Tiger Roll will have his measure though. Solid each way claims, or certainly plays claims, but Tiger Roll winning that race over hurdles the other week was just ridiculous. It was a proper, what have I witnessed to him?
Yeah, I mean, you've already said how much you fancy him. Jason's asked, is he too short at evens? What would you price him up to be? Would you have him as odds on?
Probably, yeah, because you sort of, what prices did you show his form and not fall over? Janica has been mentioned by a couple of series contender for Nicky Henderson. Just run out of it by Cyril Delac at Cheltenham in the day you were there, in the Timeform novices race.
I'll have to admit, by the way, I wasn't.
Oh, you weren't
I was drinking. I think I was in Carlisle for my mate's birthday. Yeah, I couldn't be further away from Cheltenham.
Right, okay, don't admit that. So Cyril Delac comes from the same race, so they tied him very closely. Another strong and really competitive race. Wouldn't put people off that.
Oh God, the questions.
Mention Minella Rocco, aren't they? Ultima, because I've only got a couple of minutes. Also, I'd be interested in.
So we can stay. Are you in any rush, or we can probably stay for another 5 or 6 minutes, or a bit longer if the questions are going on?
Have I got a train to catch?
Yeah, well.
Don't be lying to them.
Absolutely love the game, don't we?
Danny, you're looking forward to the pie tomorrow night at St Kent's. Yeah, that's the absolute nap. That the St Kent's
it's the
pie,
the Irish stew, isn't it? That's the absolute be all and end all.
Beautifully cooked chips at St Kentigans. And it's only down the road from me, so it's winner.
Brio Conti in the Coral Cup. Steve's asking.
Oh, I like him. Yeah, I thought
Steve or Brio Conti.
Steve's the top bloke.
Get his picture up for you.
Yeah, I mentioned Steve, and I think the same Steve mentioned no comment has been another horse with a large P. That's very true. Brio Conti upset the odds when winning the other week, but he was a horse who showed loads of ability in bumpers first off, winning at Warwick, and then over hurdles as well, and it just all came together for him that day. I think now he's on the right path. He is a runner for that race. They'll hold him up, bury him in a big field. He'll have to weave his way through, but he'd definitely have a chance.
I don't know if you mentioned Mvoira in the champion bumper.
Mentioned getting the queue as being my first choice for that race. Others further down the list, and the Sunshine would be one at a big price. I thought might be a runner, but I'm very impressed with them Violin. It looks like a more of a grinding type, not in the same mould as a few speedy ones we've seen that win that race.
We're almost there, really.
Might just die full of sneeze as we go off.
Yeah, so that's bang on 7, and we've not needed to extend the stream. That's all the questions.
Yeah, and you're going to be staying here for the next 3 hours to answer any other ones.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, no, I think my train's in 25 minutes, so the quicker we get off.
Well, thanks for signing, everybody, and spend it. Hopefully not wasting an hour. Hopefully we've come up with something worthwhile. And
if you've joined late, I believe that this will be downloaded and stuck on YouTube, so you can go back and watch it all again. You can
don't read the comments, not that much. I've learnt that from many years of being on television and stuff. The last thing you want to do is read comments about you.
Oh, I know. So thanks very much for joining us anyway, Dan.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Wish you the best of festivals.
Yes, thank you, and you.